अधिकार, आपको सदन से बाहर होगा। इस तरीके से सदन नहीं चल सकता। सदन की कार्रवाई 3 बजे तक के लिए स्थगित की जाती है।
All right, those were some of the scenes on day 1 of week 2 of the monsoon parliament session, and the fireworks have begun again. Opposition MPs have continued the demand for a discussion on high inflation and protested using placards with various messages like Mehngai Ki Sarkar. The Loksabha Speaker Om Birla issued several warnings before suspending proceedings for the first time. At one point, he even said that if the opposition wants a discussion, I am ready. His message essentially is, don't show placards inside the House. This is what has bothered the Speaker and angered him. He says if you want to show placards, go outside. And, of course, that we are ready for a discussion. The Speaker eventually suspended 4 Congress MPs. These include Manikam Tagore, Ramya Haridas, Jyotimani and T.N. Pratapan. The opposition has been sparring with the government ever since the start of the session. Some of the primary issues that are at the center of its fight, of course, inflation number 1. The CPI has been at 7%. Sticky inflation is what we are facing, and the opposition says they want a discussion. Now, here's where it gets peculiar. The government says we are ready, and this has been going on for days. The opposition says we want a discussion. The government says we are ready. But neither the discussion is actually taking place, and nor is Parliament functioning. Meanwhile, the ruckus continues. The second big issue, of course, is the hike of GST on packaged products at about 5%. That's also a contentious issue, and the reasoning is that it is fueling inflation. The alleged misuse of central agencies is something that opposition wants to discuss as well, with the spate of ED cases against opposition leaders. And the recently announced Agnipath scheme is also a bone of contention. But while the ruckus has been continuing all through last week, the suspension is particularly on carrying of placards while protesting in the House. So let's take a look at what those rules are. Under Rule 349 in the Lok Sabha, distribution of any literature, questionnaire, pamphlets, leaflets within the precincts of the House is not allowed. The revised advisory by the Lok Sabha Secretariat, issued on 16 July before the session started, says any matter, printed or otherwise, should not be distributed without the Speaker's permission, but also adds that placards are strictly prohibited inside the Parliament House complex. The use of placards for protest in Parliament, though, is by no means new. Let me just give you a few examples where placards have been used in the past. July 2022, protest by Congress, TMC, DMK in both houses, disruption over GST, Mehngai, ED summons, that's what we've been seeing all along. In December 2021, opposition MPs trooped to the well of the House, and there was disruption over the Lakhimpur Kheri violence. Placards were also used then. In July of that year, 2021, opposition MPs, in fact, tore placards, hurled papers, and there was disruption over the Pegasus row and the farm laws. But it's not just opposition MPs and non-BJP MPs who have been doing this. Let me hark back to the monsoon session of 2012, when the UPA was in power and the NDA held demonstrations with boards, including one that said the PM must resign. The disruption that time in Parliament was over the coal scam. In the 15th Lok Sabha session, AIA DMK MPs held placards and protested in the House. There was disruption over the bill to divide Andhra Pradesh. So it is not new, but this time there has been a suspension of 4 members of Parliament. The decision of suspension is, of course, at the discretion of the Speaker. So whose fault is it? The opposition says their democratic right to protest is being muted. The government says Parliament is not being allowed to function. To speak on this, I'm joined today by PDT Achari, constitutional expert, but I'm also speaking exclusively with Jyotimani, the suspended Congress MP. Tuhin Sinha, national spokesperson of the BJP, is joining us on the show. Welcome to all of you. Ms. Jyotimani, let me begin by asking you, why the need for placards? And why this much ruckus, when the Speaker said very clearly that I'm okay with holding a discussion, I'm agreeing to a discussion, then why the continued holding of placards and protesting in Parliament?
See, we the opposition has only 2 demands. Demand A, they have to withdraw the GST on essential commodities like milk, rice, wheat, pencil, dahi, even ICU in the hospitals, electric crematorium. So these are all the places to levy the GST. How can common man face this kind of burden? Already they are burdened with so much inflation. COVID time also government was not supported them. There is a, because of this government's failure, there is a rupees actually sliding to 80 rupees. The economy is completely destroyed. The people are in the receiving end, not the friends, Modi ji's friends like Mr. Ambani, Mr. Adani. They are not facing the burnt. They have become the richest top 4 in the world. But the government is trying to crush the common people. So that's what we are against it. We want the government to withdraw the GST.
Ma'am, but my question to you,
Ms.
Jyotimani, allow me, ma'am, with all due respect, allow me to
finish.
Let me reframe my question because I'm asking something else, ma'am. I'm asking, why did you use placards?
I'm coming to that. So second demand is, we are asking the government to have a discussion on price rise on the floor of the parliament. We are protesting outside the parliament. We are protesting inside the parliament for the last 6 days. We moved adjournment motion after adjournment motion. The government is not relenting to have a discussion. They are keep saying, let Nirmala Sitharaman ji, who's not unwell, come to parliament, then we'll have a discussion. We are also want Nirmala Sitharaman ji to come back to parliament as early as possible with hale and healthy. There is no argument on that. But I just would like to quote 2 incidents in the past. When the Formula Bill has become a problem, it's not the agriculture minister who answered the parliament. It was the defense minister, Mr. Rajnath Singh, who addressed the parliament. When the rebel scheme was become a problem, it was not Nirmala Sitharaman ji, was then defense minister, was not answering the parliament. It was Mr. late Arun Jaitley who answered the parliament. So this is how this government behave. So what is the problem? Now if any other minister or why don't Prime Minister come to parliament and answer the question of the opposition? This has a huge impact on 132 crore people. See, why Prime Minister afraid to come to parliament? Why Prime Minister afraid to face questions? Why Prime Minister afraid to answer the questions? This is affecting the people. This is what
Jyotimani, you told me you will come to my answer. 1 minute, ma'am. 1 minute, ma'am. You told me you will come to my answer, and I listened patiently to what all the opposition wants to talk about. I've mentioned it in my opening as well. That's why I will ask you for a third time. I will ask you for a third time specifically. No. Now let me at least ask the question. Let me at least ask the question and specifically.
Don't worry about
when the speaker said no, I'm not worrying, but let me ask the question, let me frame it. When the speaker said that we are ready for a discussion, then why still continue with the placard protest? That's my simple question, ma'am.
I understand your anxiety to support the government. And let me come to your question. See, the government is not ready to have a discussion. What do you think we're supposed to do? We all come out and sit at home. That's what we've been voted as a responsible opposition. We are fighting for the issues of the people, which is affecting the people. Think about the poor woman in the street. You put a GST, 5% GST on milk. If a poor woman in the street have 2 children, how they afford to buy milk, rice, all essential commodities? Okay. Do you think we should not have a legitimate right to protest in the parliament? So tell me, you showed some example in the past that where the Congress party and opposition hold placards. Why don't you go back to the before 2014?
I
did. BJP hold the same kind of
ma'am, if you had listened to my entire, and I'll pull that up again, if you had listened to my entire opening, I've talked about 2012, when in the coal scam, BJP leaders at that time have held up placards saying the Prime Minister must resign. So please don't jump to conclusions on what I'm trying to do. It is my duty and my job to ask a specific question and get a specific answer for my viewers. Let me come to Mr. Tuhin Sinha. Jyotimani says that is opposition supposed to sit at home?
Something new in
is opposition supposed to sit at home? Number 1. Number 2, this is nothing new. Why the suspension? And also, why this quote time and again, or this claim time and again that we will have a session, we will have a discussion, and then no sign of it?
Very, patiently heard out Jyotimani ji, and I think, whatever she said has only reiterated that Rahul Gandhi's party is incapable of any informed discussion. Now, you would recall that in the last 3 years, the Loksabha has recorded unprecedented productivity despite all the impediments unleashed by the Congress party and the opposition, largely on account of their boorish behavior. And to give some examples of this boorish behavior, you would recall that in January 2019, when the discussion on Rafale was taking place and a lady defense minister was putting out facts, Rahul Gandhi was winking and, leading his party in throwing paper planes. That's number one. We saw the behavior during the Pegasus crisis, the Pegasus discussions when they, manhandled some marshals. And now we see the behavior now when, despite various requests from the Lok Sabha Speaker, they refuse to. Now, I heard your introductory remarks. You've made it very clear that under the existing rules, holding of placards is not allowed. Now, I also heard Jyotimani ji about her problem with GST, 5% additional imposition. There is a process to it. In the next GST council, why don't the finance ministers of all the states ruled by the opposition get together and, demand a withdrawal? So there is a process to all of those things. And Mr. Om Birla has been a strict disciplinarian who, despite all the impediments of boorish behavior unleashed by the opposition parties, has stuck to his job. So what is wrong in it? There is no topic I can recall on which discussion has not happened. But the point is that you need to be a little more informed about the processes. For GST 5%...
You have still not answered my question, sir. And this is something I'm seeing common in Ms. Jyotimani and Mr. Tuhin Sinha, both excellent speakers and, manje ve khiladi when it comes to politics. But it's my job to get the answer to the question that the viewers want to know about. Hence, I will reiterate, where is the discussion? Why just the promise? Where is the date? Why doesn't it make it to the list of business of Parliament?
That is because we are waiting for Honorable Finance Minister to be back. There are 3 more weeks to go for it. It is the prerogative of the Lok Sabha Speaker to schedule discussions. Has he said no? He hasn't said no. So have the patience. There are equally important issues which can be taken up by the ministers who are present. Why does the opposition believe it is still in power? It can, schedule events in Parliament when it is solely the prerogative of the Honourable Speaker.
Okay. Mr. Sinha, one more question on this. You're saying, why is the opposition so bothered? Okay, so you're saying they're boorish, they don't know what to debate, discuss. All right, let's keep that aside. As the ruling party, what do you think is the bigger issue in the country today than inflation, than rupee at 80, than LPG cylinders at the prices they are?
Do
you not think that these are very, very crucial issues that the people of this country need to hear about?
Have you heard any minister saying that it's the most trivial issue? Have you heard that? We are ready for discussion. We are waiting for Honorable Finance Minister to be back, and there are 3 more weeks to go for the Parliament.
Okay, your response to that. Jyotimani, your response to that. 3 more weeks are left. They're waiting for Nirmala Sitharaman to get better, and then they will continue the discussion. Why can this not wait?
See, I can only appall with the arrogance of the BJP spokesperson when they call the opposition foolish while we fighting for the issues of the people, the GST and the price rise. This is the arrogance of the government in the floor. The arrogance showed by the BJP spokesperson, with due respect, in the show, the same arrogance is shown in the government in the floor of the Parliament. That is the crux of the issue. Secondly, I'm really heartening to listen to my friend that actually they are talking about...
One minute, Tuhin Sinha, please let her finish one by one.
In the Parliament,
let her finish. Tuhin, let her finish. Tuhin Sinha, I request you to let her finish. Let's speak one by one so the viewers can understand what you're saying.
See, we have only 2 more weeks to go. The price rise and this GST issue has to be discussed in the Parliament. I already said this government has no precedence that only that particular minister has answered the particular department issues. There is no such history with this government. Why don't the Prime Minister come to answer?
But it's their wish, right? It's their prerogative, isn't it? Ms. Jyotimani, you're saying there's no precedence, but it's their prerogative. If they want to field the finance minister, they have a right to, isn't it?
then it's we the opposition also have our own prerogative, because our job is to fight for the people. Do you think all the people in the street has to go to hell? Who will fight for them? The opposition is fighting for the people. We just want to tell the people of this country, there is an opposition, there is a Congress party will fight for you against this anti-people BJP Modi government. That's what we are doing. If they do have the prerogative, why don't we have our own prerogative?
So, okay, let me come to that question.
We are actually fighting for our
Let me come to that question.
What do you think opposition is supposed to do?
Tuhin Sinha, the bigger charge is that the voice of the opposition in this country is being muted. And this is something that began even before this parliament session, first with the list of unparliamentary words, then part of the rules. One of them I read out today. The point about placards is explicitly added in and mentioned in the 16th July Loksabha Secretariat communication. That is the charge. That the grand scheme is to not allow the opposition to speak up and really make their voice heard on the floor of the House. What is your response to that?
The opposition doesn't comprehend issues properly in the same way that ma'am did not hear my word. I never used the word foolish. I used the word boorish, and I want to ask ma'am over here, does she condone an MP winking when a woman, minister is speaking? So I use the word boorish. Point number one. Number two, the list of unparliamentary words that you're talking about, that precedent has existed for the last many decades. If a word like Bal Buddhi is being, considered unparliamentary, that is only to save the reputation of somebody they should be worried about. So it uniformly applies to all parties by repeatedly projecting and, unsuccessfully projecting the government as, crushing the voice of the opposition. They haven't succeeded so far. So why do they want to peddle? Why do they want to keep indulging in this cliched narrative, which does not cut ice even with the voters and even with the people? They should introspect.
I want to understand, I want to get some clarity on the rules. So if Mr. Sinha and Ms. Jyotimani, if you will give a few minutes, I have PDT Achari. He's considered one of the foremost constitutional experts in the country, and I want to get his perspective on this. Mr. Achari, I want to come to you specifically on the issue of placards. In this particular case, it's the carrying of placards which has attracted suspension. What are the rules and what's the precedent to that?
See, there is a particular rule which says that members shall not exhibit anything in the House. So that means placards and things like that. But I must tell you that this displaying placards, which was always discouraged, and people were not doing it earlier. In my time, when Somnath Chatterjee was a speaker, he never allowed any member to carry a placard inside the House. He would immediately ask that member to go out. So that used to be the case. There was a strict adherence to this rule. So carrying placards into the House, that actually kind of destroys the sanctity of the House. And that is something which should be discouraged. And that is not the way to protest. There are many other ways to protest in the House, but not certainly carrying placards in the House. A lot of placards in a House of the legislature, central legislature, Parliament, is something which doesn't square with the dignity of the House. Therefore, and then a rule is there. Therefore, the Speaker is right in asking members not to bring placards inside the House.
Yeah, but here the bone of contention, Mr. Achari, is a specific debate. And here's where it gets baffling, because the opposition says we want the debate, the government says we're ready to debate, and yet there's no debate. How do you see this situation?
That is something which is baffling me, because if opposition demands discussion, and that is their right. They want to discuss all important issues, and that is what this House is meant for also, apart from the government business. And the government is willing to, that is what he said, government is willing to discuss. Then I do not know what exactly is the problem. Can't put my finger on that. If that is so, then they have to sit the Speaker has to convene the meeting of the Business Advisory Committee and then find time for that. That is the only thing which needs to be done. If both sides are willing to have a discussion in the House on price rise and other important issues, this is all what they need to do. Speaker convene a meeting. Speaker is the chairman of the committee. He convenes a meeting and then fix time for the discussion.
You know, Mr. Achari, thank you. I know you're short on time, so thank you for joining us today. That was PDT Achari. And two very clear things he said. He said placards is not ideal, and he has said that both sides need to meet and figure out when to do this. But Tuhin Sinha, traditional sense tells us, and this is something you will hear session after session, no matter who's in government, that it is the prerogative of the Treasury bench. It is the prerogative of the government of the day to run the House smoothly. We've seen this. This is an age-old debate. You know that very well. It harks back to 2G coal scam days, when the BJP was on the other side, used to disrupt the House and say it's the prerogative of the government to run the House smoothly. Where have those lessons gone now?
I think you must have been slightly disappointed to get very pointed answers from Mr. Achari, who believes that, the Honorable Speaker was right. Now, if you look at the number of bills which we have passed in the last 3 years, in each session of Parliament, the way Parliament has functioned way beyond midnight, which used to, I don't know when was the last time something of that sort happened, when members would make sure that if a bill has to be passed on a certain date, they would, discuss well beyond 12:30 in the night. So I think, this is a Loksabha Speaker who means business. This is a Loksabha Speaker who has very little tolerance for unparliamentary behavior, and you got to appreciate that. If he has been largely, or, I don't see any instance, I don't recall any instance of him being particularly or in any way being unfair on anybody. But yes, when it comes to discipline, he wants to move the particular days when the session is in Parliament to really function and the productivity to be high. That is what all taxpayers would also want. So what is the problem with that?
No, but Mr. Tuhin Sinha, you've enjoyed that little pot shot at me. Jyotimani took one earlier. Both of you all want me to, sort of be on your side. I'm only on the side of the people who've bothered to tune in and watch what we're doing right now. I value their time, so that's the only side I'm on. You still didn't answer my question though, Tuhin. Whose job is it to make Parliament function? Isn't it the government's?
Absolutely, and that is why if you look at the sheer number of bills which have been passed, the number of hours, despite all impediments which have been put in each session of Parliament, that is precisely what I told you. You somehow get an impression that you never get your answers, but would that level of productivity be possible without, the government having led from the front, without the Lok Sabha?
No, it's about taking the opposition on board. And that's not necessarily, calculated in the number of hours or productivity. Because remember, you have a huge majority in the Lok Sabha. You're going to get your bills passed one way or the other. The charge is not how many bills you get passed, Tuhin. That's why I'm asking you again. The charge is whether you take the opposition on board or they completely discredit it because their numbers are too few to matter in the arithmetic of it all.
Jyotimani ji seems a very responsible person. It is my humble request to her also on your show that the opposition also needs to behave in a slightly more responsible manner. When was the last time they demanded a discussion on corruption? The way, cash worth 20 crore worth of rupees is being found out from the homes of TMC Confidence and TMC Aids. When was the last time they demanded that?
Okay, Jyotimani, your response first to what Mr. PDT Achari said. Your response first to Mr. PDT Achari said, and whether, you trust anyone else or not, this is a gentleman who has consistently over time spoken his mind. And he is saying that placards in the House is not right. There are better ways to protest. You give speeches, you give your point of view because people want to hear what you're saying. People who voted you in want to hear what you're saying. Why the placards?
I agree with Acharya ji. When he was in the Parliament, maybe he said, and I was there, the Speaker don't allow this kind of things. There is other means of protesting, other ways of protesting. The issues here, I wish those time has to come back to the parliament to have a very fruitful discussion. Those time the government might be Congress obviously would have been conducted in the House in a very democratic way. There are a lot of space has been given to the opposition. Even I remember Nehruji has given an opposition member a chance. One member from the DMK then was in the parliament. He was given a chance to speak on that Hindi language issue. So those days have gone. That's what we, the Congress party, is worrying now. The issue, second part, Acharyaji was mentioning that there is a business advisory council meeting. Government and opposition have to sit and discuss this issue. We have been 6 days. Our leaders, Congress party and other opposition leaders, sitting in the business advisory council and telling the government, please come to an agreement. We'll have an agreement to have a discussion. But the government keeps saying we will have a discussion, but we don't see the light of the day. That is the problem here. The government is actually, my friend said actually we should be behaved in a very responsible way. Yes, I agree with him. We, the opposition, actually behaved in a very responsible way. That is why actually the number of days the parliament has fruitfully functioned has increased. You don't take the credit for that actually, because when Congress was in power, BJP behaved very unruly in the parliament. They really created a lot of rucks in the parliament.
So give them the credit when your productivity goes up as well, Tuhin. Quick response, and then I have to wrap.
The government to function, but the government is not relenting to have a discussion.
All right, quick response, Tuhin, and then I have to wrap, please.
With due respect, Jyoti ji, charity begins at home. When your leader doesn't have a 50% attendance in parliament, a parliament which convenes for 4 weeks after a gap of 3 months, how do you expect these informed, engaging debates in parliament? Asaduddin Owaisi has a better record in parliament than your leader. Will you ever question him?
But Tuhin, are you saying you're waiting for Mr. Rahul Gandhi to come to parliament to have the inflation discussion and an informed debate? Are you waiting for him to come and have an informed debate? What exactly is your point here?
I want to say, please tell me how many days. Please tell me how many days Prime Minister has come to Parliament. My leader is not a Prime Minister. Despite that, he's keep coming to the Parliament. Tell me how many days.
Okay. We're completely derailing. We're completely derailing here. The point is, whoever comes to Parliament or doesn't come to Parliament, let's look at what the purpose of Parliament is: to air the discussion and the issues of the day. Now, anyone who's in politics and who thinks that Mehngai or price rise is not an issue is really barking up the wrong tree. So this discussion needs to happen sooner or later. We need to figure out answers, and we need a roadmap of where we're going next. That, at the bottom line, is the big takeaway. Thank you so much, Tuhin Sinha. Thank you so much, Jyotimani, for joining us on the discussion this evening. Now,